Good morning. Today's video is going to be about the head covering and family. I was asked, and am very frequently asked, a question is, how did my family react when I started wearing the head covering? Did they give me a hard time? Did they nag at me? Did they make fun of me? Did they make my life generally difficult, or were they very accepting and loving and kind about it? That is a question a lot of people are really worried about when they very first start to cover, and I totally understand and get why. I was really worried about it too. I think one of the first questions on your mind when you very first start doing it is like, oh my goodness, am I going to make a fool out of myself? I don't want to look like an idiot. No one's going to understand why that thing is on your head, you get really paranoid and really afraid. And if you're like me, a big introvert, the last thing you want to do is draw attention to yourself. I absolutely did not want to draw attention to myself in any way, shape, or form. Didn't like doing it. And it was just so hard. The first day walking out the front door, I felt like I was walking to an execution or something. Back at the time, I still had a job outside the home, so that was the first thing I had to go and do, was put it on and go to work. And yes, I promptly got laughed at work. Those people that I was working for at the time weren't necessarily, how do I put it, the nicest. Some of them it was a group of women who were really big into gossip and nagging and stuff like that, like really into it. It was their favorite sport. So walking into that, that was hard. Ultimately, I am sure without a doubt they made fun of me. I have no doubt that they did. They just didn't do it to my face. One girl she flicked it and kind of giggled like, what's this? But that was as much as they said to me. And in that particular job, I did end up losing a few months later as I continued on that covering journey. I got called into human resources, quizzed and grilled on why I felt the need to do that. Was it really a part of my religion? They may need to talk to my pastor to discuss whether or not it was appropriate and whether or not I was required to do it, and so forth. And then magically, not long after that, I was amazingly laid off for corporate cutbacks, and the corporate cutbacks was me, just the only one at that office, so I'm like, I kind of get where that was. Anyway, don't miss that job. God made it all good. Things worked out. Not a big deal. I don't really hold a grudge or anything there. I just kind of look at the place like, whatever. But they weren't family. That was coworkers. That was in some ways easier, in some ways not, I suppose, because your employment depended on it. But looking back, it was all fine. God made it good. Now, I did have a different job after that hired me with the veil on. I wore a very small, minimal black one when I got hired, and I tried to keep it not like obnoxious, not like the giant white one, just kind of usually kept a small lace veil on and wore my simple kind of modern, modest, a long skirt and a modest top, and I was fine working that way. But anyway, again, not family. Your jobs, they may come and go. I haven't even worked outside the home since 2006, so it's been a long time. And jobs come and go. Your family doesn't come and go. So how did my family react? Well, I will say, all in all, I feel like I had it pretty darn good. I did not have a lot of attacks at all. In fact, I had a lot of support. My parents are always very supporting and always have been. When it all kind of first came up and I talked to them about it, I remember one of the things my dad said to my mom, and then she told me about it later, was, I hope she understands she needs to obey Sean. And that's my husband's name. And it was important to him that I had the heart of that right, of that the important part was obeying and with the headship. And I'm like, cool. So he was pretty supportive and understood the reason why, and Mom was supportive. Now, they did not believe in nor do practice head covering. My dad is gone now. He passed away about a year ago. But my mom is still with us, and she does not practice head covering, and they have a different belief about that. So while they were supportive of it, they do believe differently, and that's fine. Other people in the family, they were pretty supportive too. Most people never really bothered to even ask, though. And that's kind of the funny part. And I think you could kind of call it that elephant in the room mentality. You kind of feel weird about it for a while, especially the first time you go to like a family gathering and you're wearing this. It's like everybody's looking at it, but nobody's going to talk about it. Because honestly, most of my family, they're too sweet and they're too kind to say anything, you know, and you know that they're curious, you know they're wondering why, what's this about, but most of them just didn't say anything. And in some ways I almost wish they would have asked, you know, what's this about, but most of them didn't. In fact, I can't really think of anybody on like the main family gatherings we go to. I can't think of anybody who asked. It was just kind of a little weird thing there, but that was okay. And honestly, sometimes I wish that they would have just said, hey, why are you doing this? I could have got it out there and it could have all been, you know, done. But in the same turn, I had it really, really, really good. So the fact that they didn't ask, they didn't nag, whether or not anybody made fun of me or not, I don't know. They probably had a little giggle behind their back, like, or behind my back. What's she doing now? You know, she looks a little silly. You know, she doesn't need to do that or something like that. But they were never, ever mean to me. And I know they still love me. So all in all, again, I had it pretty darn good. Now, when I started wearing, this almost could really be, another video and probably will be, but when I started wearing the much fuller, more Muslim looking, where I was covering every bit of my hair, that was more uncomfortable, both for me physically and then more awkward for family. I do know that people were asking my family because they wouldn't ask me, you know, is she a nun? You know, all sorts of different things. But by far and large, most people thought I was Muslim. And I didn't like that. Didn't like it at all. That created more issues. Sorry, my phone kicked off there when an alarm went off again. Anyway, most people thought I was more of the Muslim persuasion and didn't like that. It created more concern for my family and stuff like that. They're kind of worried that I was really bringing something, I suppose legalistic was their worry. I was bringing something legalistic onto myself. Because at the same time, I really was, you know, a whole other story there. But anyway, they were more worried. And they weren't mean at all. They were just expressing concern. No one said anything. It was just looks on the faces. And that's okay. They loved me. They were worried. And for a lot of reasons, and again, I will go into in another video, I ended up quitting on that particular style. I have a lot of reasons for me that I felt that that was the appropriate and right thing to do. But honestly, over the years, they've gotten used to it. I don't think they even think about it anymore. If they do, I can't tell. I haven't heard anybody say anything. All in all, there was one comment one family member made, and it was someone who had otherwise been completely supportive, and they were really tired that day, and it was because I'd had that Muslim style on, and it was the first time they seen me that way, and they made a kind of a crude, harsh comment. But it hurt my feelings at the time, but it was for that day, and I also realized that person was tired, and they didn't really feel good. And don't hold the first thing against them, not the first thing, I really don't. I understand their reaction, totally do. All in all, though, they were supportive every other time about it, and then most of the family as a whole were. I am sure there was some serious curiosity going, but they were too polite to ask, and I appreciate their respect and kindness, and I feel very grateful to my family that they've always been so kind and loving and not mean at all about it. Again, I'm sure they were curious, but most of them have never asked me. So that's kind of my experience with that. Now, I will say I have been in a lot of head covering groups over the years. Many. I really strongly recommend them. You see a lot of different experiences. I realize mine really isn't the norm. Many ladies, when they very first start covering, they have a lot of opposition from their family. First, I want to clarify that I think it's very important that you get your husband's permission and support before you ever put on a veil. You may sit down like I did, read and study the scripture, and find out you feel like you should be putting a physical piece of cloth on your head for a veiling, and your husband may have no idea what he may never even really heard of it or read that particular passage or what have you. You need to talk to him first. You really need to get that right first. I know other people disagree with me on this, but this is my opinion. I do not think you should cover without your husband's permission and full support. I think you need to go to God in prayer if you don't have that. And I think if he does not give you the permission and support, I think you need to obey because of the way the head covering passages are phrased. I think it's much more important that you obey your husband in this matter. So if you're not wearing a veil because you don't have your husband's support, you have my support. I'll put it that way. And I think that that's, my opinion is that's what the scripture would have you do, because it phrases much more strongly how important your obedience to your husband, your submission to your husband is, much more so than wearing this versus the honor dishonor that it talks about. And because you're put under his headship, to wear a symbol of that headship against his will, that's just counterintuitive completely to me. So that's my opinion about it. There are a lot of people who agree with me, but I know there's a lot of people who disagree passionately that you should always obey God rather than man. I get that and understand that, but in this particular instance, I think you need to obey your husband. Anyway, that said, I would also submit, if you're a young girl and you're still living with your parents, I think you need your your father's and your mother's permission, particularly your father's. But I think that permission needs to be there. Now, if you're a lady independent living on your own, maybe you're single, unmarried, or maybe widowed or whatever, then it's on you. It's up to you. You can do what you want to obey, or, look at the scriptures and decide the best way to proceed. That out of the way, I just wanted to put that disclaimer out there, because some people will view that, well, I'm going to do what I want to do. My mom and dad don't want me to do that, but I think I should, so I'm going to do it. I think you need to double check your scriptures there and look closer, because it's worded that you also need to obey your parents, so and obey your husband if you're married. Anyway, I just had to put that disclaimer out there before I continue. What if you're one of these ladies that have struggled and you have had your family come against you? I've heard some really rough stories. Like, people have really different families than me, apparently, because some ladies have had maybe their mother-in-laws or just their aunt, their own mother. Their own mother sometimes will come against them like with full force that you just wouldn't believe, because they find it embarrassing or they just find it awful, horrible, you name it. Sometimes you're dealing with a Christian, sometimes you're dealing with an unsaved person. Probably even harder if it's an unsaved person, because you still want to be a witness to them. But those are things, again, I have not personally experienced, but I've seen other ladies, and it's a struggle. I will not lie, it can be a really big struggle for people. If you're trying to get over dealing with this yourself, how you have to go about doing this, you're timid, you're shy, maybe you're afraid of making a fool of yourself. You're like, what if they make fun of me? What if they say mean things to me? What if I look like an idiot? What if I do this for a while and then change my mind? Or, there's a lot of questions that swirl in your head. And then if someone comes against you, that makes it 10 times harder. And that's not easy. I will not lie. I will not sugarcoat it and say it's all puppies and kittens and an easy walk. I feel like God gave me a fairly easy walk, other than the losing my job part, but with my family, I feel like I had it very easy. So I can't say I'm super experienced there, but I will give you a little advice that I have picked up from the groups and from other ladies who have had to walk a hard road. And usually what they've had to do is first pray. You always got to pray first, right? You got to ask God, please help me to understand this. And the thing I would really, really recommend, before you even put this on or start this battle, make sure you've studied it. Make sure you've studied it well, and make sure you know that you have solid ground that you're standing on before you go out there, because people will eat you alive. They will come at you. They will throw every argument you've never thought of. Make sure you look at the arguments against it and for it, and make sure you know that you're doing what you feel like the good Lord wants you to do. Make sure you know it well, because you will falter and you will fail, and that rug will be yanked out from under you, and you will stop doing it. And if there's one thing I think is a harm, it's an inconsistent witness and flopping back and forth on these issues. There were 2 times I took the veil off, and I deeply regretted that, because I felt like that was an inconsistent witness. They were very short times in the span of time since 2001, since I've worn the head covering. But I do regret doing that, because I feel like I put an inconsistency out there. And some people do it back and forth, over and over throughout all the years. And I understand it's because Satan comes at you over it. He really does. And he'll push a lot of confusion. And you have to be careful about that, and be well grounded and studied in the Word on it. Having the groups and stuff have helped me a lot. Having other ladies to turn to and say, oh man, this particular day it's been hard, someone asked me in the store and kind of made fun of me a little bit. I caught people staring at me, various things that might happen. But if your family's coming at you, I think that must be one of the hardest things, especially if it's someone close like your mom or your dad or your mother-in-law or something like that. Oh, it'd be hard. And some of them do. And some of them face maybe a really bold personality that just every time you see them, they're bringing it up and telling you how foolish you look, or how ugly it is, how unfashionable it is, how scripturally you're wrong. They're right and you're wrong. Still, people have different opinions on it. I get that. But some of them have their opinion so strongly, that they're just, no matter what, they will not back down. They're like a bulldog, won't let go. And that's not easy to deal with. But what I recommend is getting firm in it. Getting firm in your own opinion. Know it forwards, backwards, sideways, and inside out. Know that passage. Know it well. And be solid in your conviction. Pray. Talk to God. Fast about it. Do everything. Make sure, again, you have your husband's support. That one really matters. And outside of that, you treat everybody else kind. You treat them with respect. And you treat them with love. But you draw a line and you say, this is my decision. This is not your decision. This is my life and my head. You let it go. It is my decision. It is not up for discussion. If you allow them to dominate you, so if you will, they will keep doing it, and they will keep doing it, and they will keep doing it. It's kind of like letting a bully pick on you. You can't do that. You have to draw a line. If there's one thing I learned in school, eventually you have to stand up for yourself. You can do it in a kind way, in a meek and humble way, but you can still be your own wall, if you will. And it doesn't have to be a wall that can be torn down easily. It can be a firm wall, but yet flexible too. You want to be able to listen to that side. You want to hear them out, because they want to know that you have heard them out, and it's the right thing to do anyway. What if they do have a very good point biblically that you need to hear out? Iron sharpens iron. We should listen and hear each other out. But when it comes down to it, you've decided, you've studied it, there has to be a point when you put up that wall and you say, I love you. You have a different opinion than I do. I am decided on this. My husband's decided on this. This is where we stand, and this is what we will do. There is the line. Please stop crossing it. And you have to just say, this is not up for discussion. This is my life, and it is not yours. I will not dog you about your life. Do not dog me about mine. And it is what it is. And it has to be that way. And if they still won't quit and they still keep pushing you, just every time, stand your ground. You stand your ground. You do it lovingly. You do it kindly. You don't have to be mean. You don't have to call names. You don't have to get mad. Though I realize that's sometimes easier said than done. But you do not have to be mean about it. You just stand your ground, be firm and quiet. And if you don't know what to say and they're being mean and they're launching arguments, sometimes the simplest thing to say is nothing. You just close your lips tight and say, I love you. It's not up for discussion, and leave it at that. You do not have to answer the arguments. You do not have to answer every word that someone launches at you. Sometimes silence is enough of an answer. So those are my thoughts. I do recommend hearing them out, though. I just think that's the right thing to do. Hear each other out as we go through our walk, because we need to keep each other on the narrow path, and that person may genuinely and sincerely believe that they're helping you. And that's out of love. That's not out of meanness or anything. So hear the person out. But when you and your husband are really firm on this issue, like personally, I'm very firm about the head covering. If someone comes at me, I will listen to them. I will listen to them. And unless there's something that really rocks my world and changes my opinion, our decision is what it is. And some things are up for discussion and some things aren't. It's kind of like with your kids. Do you homeschool or do you public school? Do you vaccinate or don't you vaccinate? Do you have your child wear a purple shirt on Tuesday? Just some things are your decision and your family's decision only. And other people, loving as though they may be, are just, as my dad would have said, they don't have a horse in this race. They don't. They need to back off and let it be. So I am just of the opinion that some things are my business and no one else's. And that's the way it is. Now here I am putting my business out on YouTube. But hopefully it helps you all. Hopefully you can learn some things from my mistakes and my crazy walk. And then in this particular instance, again, I feel like I've had it easy. I really do. I don't feel like I've been given that hard of a time about it. But I do know that other people have not been so fortunate. And I've had some ladies write me that I'm like, oh my, that would be hard. But each situation is going to be different. And you take each situation before the Father and you say, God, please help me. What do I do? How do I tackle this? And then you study it. You study. Make sure you're firm. And then once you're there, once you know what you're doing, you stand your ground. You stand it peacefully and you stand it lovingly. You don't have to break ties with family. You don't have to put them out of your life. Not over this. It's just not, something that you got to do. Unless they got really crazy about it and harassing about it. But still, most time, my experience, most people will back off. If you stand your ground firmly, lovingly, and kindly, most people realize, well, I'm not going to get through to them on this, and they'll just leave you alone. And that's ultimately what you want them to do. You don't want them to just let it go. Realize you're agreeing to disagree, move on with life, right? So I hope this video has been a help. I've got several others to film here today, so if you see, again, me wearing the same thing in all my videos, it's not that I'm not changing my clothes. I just tend to film in batches. I'm finding that works really, really well for my rhythm. I'll batch film and then put them out a little bit of a time as I have time to edit and then spread it on out. It's working out pretty well for me. I'm hoping to be able to film a little easier. Like right now I tend to film on Tuesdays because my husband goes into Cleveland that day and I have a really quiet morning. And that's what's going on here. It's Tuesday and he's gone into Cleveland. So he's also kindly got me some photography lights that are coming here in a few days. And those particular lights are solid on all the time, so they can be used for videoing as well. So I might set me up a little spot down in the basement where I can go down and film anytime I want and have complete quiet and, So that will be kind of neat. And I might change my schedule a little there. I don't know with those coming, but it makes it a little more possible to film in other spots. Right now I've been filming here right in my kitchen so I can be right next to the window and have a lot of natural light coming in. The light can be a big deal when you're doing the video because everywhere else, you get funny shadows. And like I had the kitchen light on a few minutes and I looked very yellow. I looked like jaundiced almost. So anyway, a little bit about the filming. So you may see a change, you may see a background change coming here soon, I don't know, but I'm excited about the lights that he got, and you know, for photos and stuff too. I've been really enjoying my camera. I usually just film my video on my cell phone though, at least currently. Eventually I'll use my new camera for the videos, so we'll see. Changes. So you guys have a great day.